Gina Moreno, welcome to Latinas Power Talk. How are you?
Yay! Thank you for having me. I'm
You're
so excited
finally
to be
here because I feel like we've been
know.
talking about this since season 1, girl. Where have you been?
I know. I've been close by, and now I made it.
You've been everywhere. Honestly, I saw you went to Harvard to speak recently. You've been doing a whole bunch of amazing things, putting Latinas on the map, online and in person, IRL, in real life.
Yes.
You're doing amazing. I'm so happy to have you here on the show and talk about everything that you've done and kind of your story. One thing that I've noticed about you specifically is that you have a strong resume. Like, you've done a lot of things. You worked at Microsoft. You've been a public speaker. You're a coach now. You've kind of allowed yourself to grow and change in different seasons. And with that change, be able to also pivot in your career in new and exciting opportunities, right? That start to align with who you are in that moment.
Yes.
How has that been? Because I feel like sometimes you got to strip your ego to get to the next part of your career.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you've done, just to give people a little bit of context of like where you started and where you are now.
Yeah. So my first career was engineering.
Yeah.
So I went to school for engineering, bachelor's and master's. And I did my whole career with different internships around the country. And then for my first full-time job, I worked at Microsoft as a technical account manager, which is more sales and consulting. And then I moved on to being a PM, so a program manager in the engineering team at Microsoft. It was an internal team. And alongside this path, I was also building a different path. In 2019, I had a TED Talk, and that was pretty much the catalyst for me to do public speaking. And it was something that really happened like in alignment. Yeah. And so then at the same time as I was at Microsoft, I started creating content, getting recognized for the content, doing public speaking, doing Airbnb. So I'm doing those two things at the same time. And so 2023, I decided to leave my career at Microsoft, at least at this stage in my life, never say never.
Right.
And then I started my entrepreneurship journey. And so then last year I did a lot of different things. I launched a podcast as well. I did—
You're on season 2.
Yes. Did a retreat, a conference, a group program, did public speaking, and continued to do my Airbnb. So I really did a lot. It was a little bit too much. I went into that conclusion a few weeks ago. I was like, yeah, it was a lot.
How do you know it was too much?
Because there comes a point where you do your quarterly reflections.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I actually didn't spend as much time with my family in El Paso as I think it's the year that I least went to El Paso, which I take a lot of pride in going consistently to visit my family. And also, granted, I've gone through a really big change, which is living with somebody and my partner and my fiance, So then I realized, hey, I haven't gone to El Paso. And I don't think I've taken care of myself as much as I would like to. I haven't practiced a lot of self-care. And then the last one is that I haven't traveled for fun. And I came to this realization maybe like late last year, maybe October, November. So then I was like, let me course correct.
Yeah.
So then I traveled a lot for fun, like December, January. And then it was kind of like a time to like just recalibrate and realign. And now I'm here.
So through all these different like transitions that you've had, like Microsoft, a lot of people would probably be like, wow, that's like a dream job, for a lot of people, specifically in STEM careers as well.
Correct.
What was the moment for you that you decided you were done with that?
Yeah, I think everybody has different experiences when it comes to corporate and their careers. And so when I speak, I don't mean to diminish anybody's job or career.
Yeah.
It was just my personal experience, and I'm entitled to speak about my personal experience. And for me, it just felt like a lot of my career in school and in my life, it was really built up to be something that it wasn't. Like corporate was just painted in a way where it was like, this is your wildest dream, right? It's going to be the best job and you're going to be so fulfilled and so happy and everything. And I don't think it's one person's like fault or anything. I think it was just a combination of like what I heard from my parents, especially with the background that they come from. And then, the recruiting people and like people that I knew. So I just really built it up. in my head, especially as a first generation, American first generation to go to college. And so when I got there, within the first few months, I was like, wait, hold on.
This isn't what I thought it was going to be.
This is definitely not what I thought it was going to be.
Me la pintaron muy bonito.
Sí, I mean, it wasn't like it was inherently bad. It was just not what I was expecting. I was just expecting to have a lot of autonomy, creative expression, that I would be able to make a difference in the world. Like, that's how I saw it. Like, as an engineer, I have the intelligence to build something that's going to create an impact, hopefully, especially in our communities. And so I think maybe I had the wrong expectation. And so I tried to move to different roles, but just I didn't really feel aligned or fulfilled. And that was, I think, my main point as to like, okay, I have a lot of talent, I have a lot of experience, skills, that I could use for myself to build something for myself. So I'm going to give it a shot. And so the way that I see it is like, I'm the youngest I'll ever be. And so if I'm going to take any risks, like right now.
Might as well now.
Yeah.
What better moment than now, right?
Yeah. And if we could trace it back to a specific moment, I remember in 2023, I got a specific project where I had to do something in Excel. And it was literally like soul sucking, like an Excel sheet. And I just felt so powerless and stupid because I was like, I can do so much more. And you're making me do something that literally like a software can do. So I just really didn't align with that specific team and what I was doing. And I did try to move around to different teams. I interviewed at Google, actually. I got to the last round, which means that I was just waiting for an offer. And then it was like when all the layoffs started happening in tech. And so I didn't end up getting an offer. So everything also aligned perfectly for me, like to do something different. Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you're like, I'm going to take this risk, but I don't think I'm ready?
I don't think I'm ready. No, I don't think so.
No, yeah.
No, it's because, I think I made the decision around May. Okay, so I had always kind of known that I wanted to explore a different path. I just didn't know when. And it's not that I didn't feel ready. It was just like, I guess, forming more of an idea of what I wanted to do afterwards. And then
like I'm ready for something new, but what is that new thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in that process of like self-discovery, kind of in a way as well, like did you just like tap into like different things? A ver qué queda? Or like how was that process of like finding what that next thing was like for you?
Yeah, it's so funny because, I mentioned I was doing public speaking and content creation. But in my head, como que it didn't click that, like, you could do that, like, in my head, it was just like, oh, these are things that I do. It's not like I'm going to make this my career, right?
Yeah.
And I was already doing that self-discovery journey through those things, and I deeply enjoyed them. And I think what always drove me to tech is the same drive that I have now, which is, like, the impact to the people. Like, what are you doing that is going to impact people, and how are you impacting them?
So with this first speaking engagement that you were kind of approached for, had you ever done like public speaking before?
No. So the way that it happened was, this was 2018, and I was doing a master's degree. So I was a grad student, and I don't know why. I don't know if TED Talks were trending at the time. I don't know if I was really into them. I was like, this is so cool. Like, imagine doing a TED Talk. That would be the coolest thing ever. That's like a life dream that I have. And
Bucket
then
list.
I put it into my mind, and I was like, this is a life dream for me now.
Yeah.
And so then I thought about it, and I was like, okay, this is a dream that I have. I hope that one day I get to do it. And I put the intention out there, and I was like, this is something I want to do. And then 2 months later, I got an email from my university that they're having their first ever TED event, and that you could apply to audition. And so then I was like, no way.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, this is my chance.
No, I was like, no way. I just couldn't believe that I had thought about it, and then it came into reality. And then I was like, no, there's no way. Like, I'm so young. like it just didn't fit
That
in my
doubt
head.
started
And then I was
speaking,
like,
yeah.
and plus, what would I even talk about? Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. But it's so interesting because at the same time, I was interviewing for Microsoft, and one of the things that we had to do was do a presentation about something that we were passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, what am I passionate about, right? And I was like, okay, so I'm passionate about representation, about women in STEM. And I had always been, after my own experiences
Mm-hmm.
of being in middle of nowhere, Missouri, and being the only Latina in the whole facility, you know, I was like, okay, this is something that I'm passionate about. So I created a whole presentation on it based on a diversity report that Microsoft had done. And I was like, wait, I feel like this same presentation and all the sources that I have
Could be applied
to this talk. And I think my number one blocker at the time, what I told myself was like, I have too much going on. I don't have the time. This is something I can do later. But then the universe was like, you already have the materials.
Yeah.
You already have it. And so then I applied and then I auditioned and I got it. And so it was just like, wow, everything just happened. Yeah.
What would you say currently
Mhm.
you're passionate about?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to impact, and I'm really passionate about empowering the Hispanic community, empowering women, and empowering Latinas. That's always been the thing that lights me up and gets me up in the morning. Yeah.
So, like I said, like you've been through a trajectory of like different things that you've done, and you've been super successful through everything that you've like set your mind to do. Like, you know what I mean? And you literally manifested that TED Talk. And that
That is funny.
that like looking back, like, okay, you're like, okay, I want to do a TED Talk. Boom, it happened, right?
Yeah.
Now, like public speaking is one of the many things that you do now consistently. There's so many like organizations approaching you now to like fly you over and, you know, talk to their group of people or their conference or whatever. You recently went to Harvard. Looking back and seeing how far you've come through just like the last 5 to 7 years of when you first put that out, how does that make you feel of like the growth that you've been able to experience in this space?
Yeah, it's not just about, I think, my career or my business growth. It's like an identity shift and a change completely to who I was in my early 20s, now that I'm in my late 20s. It was a deep journey of transformation, really, getting out of survival mode, redefining what success was to me, understanding who I was and what I was passionate about and what I wanted to do in the world. Like it's a whole 180, you know, it was a whole process that was very difficult. And not everything was just like, hey, you know, I'm going to do this and it just happens. I think there was a time where I really struggled. And during the time, one of my mentors, she always told me, like, this is what is gonna transform you to be the person that you want to be. Like, you want to create an impact. There's no creating an impact if you don't have this story of this experience that you're having. And I'm like, what do you mean? You know, like this is gonna be somebody's blueprint, somebody's like guide. And I was like, I don't understand, when I was in the trenches of it. And then now that I'm in the other side, I'm like, oh, I totally understand it now.
That makes sense. Because I think, okay, we were just talking about entrepreneurship, right? And that's just like one example. But I think like what I've heard from you is like, you want to make a difference is what I'm hearing from you. And a lot of people, I think, a lot of people actually in like our demographic too, like in our age rank, like we're just like, let's go make a difference and whatever is your passion, right? And I think like that mentor was right. If you want to make a difference in the world, you do have to go through the trenches. You do have to go through those obstacles, because then once you're on the other side, you can then speak on behalf of your experience.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes when like we're going through it, you're like, I don't know, like just like doubting yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening to me. Why is it happening? Maybe I'm not meant to this. But no, you are, and you are meant to go through all those struggles so that once you get out of it, you can attract people, and you can also like, you know, spread your story of empowerment to others as well. Of like, you know what? Her path wasn't easy, but she got through it.
Exactly.
And I think without struggle, there is no like reward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes like I know me, for example, that just like made me realize, because a girl can be going through it right now too. And like, you don't realize that you're going through it because you're experiencing things for the first time, most of the time, you know, and you're experiencing things that like your family members have never gone through, or, you know, it's just like you're breaking those generational curses as well, which is something that I think you talk about a lot, breaking those generational curses and that trauma that sometimes is just embedded in people. Where did that come along in your life of like wanting to speak vocally about that?
Yeah, so it all happened in 2020 when the world was shutting down. It was also when I moved to Dallas and I was alone in a new city for the most part. And it was my journey of not only like adulthood, and I think many people think it was just like, oh, you were just becoming independent, but it was more than that, because for a Latina, moving out and forming your identity outside of your family is a whole thing. Because for me, I didn't move out for college. I had the commuter experience and I went to my internships for a few months, but I think my longest one was 8 months. So that's when I really started getting the taste of it. But when I moved out and I was completely by myself is when I started that self-discovery journey into who I was outside of all these expectations and what my parents had taught me. And so then that was when I started going through it. And as I was going through it, I also was sharing it on TikTok, actually, because I also got an opportunity to get paid to do videos. And I remember, same thing at first, we always resisted, y'all. We always resisted. I was like, I'm not gonna make videos. And the whole prompt was like to create videos about personal growth. Because at the beginning they were like, oh, you could talk about engineering. And I was like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about something different. And so when they said that, I was like, okay, I can make some videos on that. And so as I was experiencing my own transformation and what I was learning, the toxic patterns that I had uncovered through therapy and coaching and, you know, my own journey, I was sharing it on TikTok as well. And so, yeah, I guess it happened at the same time. And I maybe shared things that might have seemed vulnerable to some people, but I think I had already gotten to a point where I had processed them enough where I felt comfortable putting them out like on the internet. Yeah.
You just made me realize, I think you should be a therapist, because I think you just made me realize why after college I went through like this dark period of anxiety and like it was self-discovery. Yeah. I think it was that point as well. Like I commuted to ASU, and I also had internships here, so I never moved out for college. You know what I mean? You were still kind of like in a bubble in a way, like being at home. Exactly. And like not exposed to the real world and trying to figure out like doing things on your own and being independent. So I think like that right now when you were saying that, I was like, wait a minute, I think that must have been the reason why it hit me so hard, because you were going through a transition phase, and transition phases are they're not comfy. Like, you know, you really are pushing yourself to like new places that you've never been before. But do you think like you putting yourself out there and having that opportunity of like, okay, your job kind of became content creation at that point. Do you think it was also like therapeutic for you of like, oh wait, yes, like I am going through this, and like looking back even like 2 months ago, like on your feed of like where you were at and where you're at now, like do you think it was like, but at the same time, did you ever feel fear getting judged for anything that you were putting out?
I did. Yes. Yeah. Everything you're saying. I do think sharing my story through social media and sharing my voice and my own experiences has been a healing thing to me. Like it's been just reclaiming who I am and my voice. And it's just been so empowering to myself as much as it is for others. And at the same time, I do think that I might have shared things. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't ready. I don't know. Okay. It might have been a little bit sensitive to me because the videos would do well because they were emotional and they were deep. Yeah. And they got to people, many in very inspirational ways, and others I triggered them. And so they mirrored back any fear that I had they gave it to me.
Mhm.
And it was really not a great place mentally because, I just processed this thing that I feel sure about.
Yeah.
And then I'm receiving comments of the opposite. And it's like you question, your reality, and you're like, wait, what did I even say?
Is
And
my
so,
mind playing a game with me?
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what's happening? And yeah, so it was a whole process of going through that, and it wasn't great. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
Because the parts that I take away from now are really great. Like the reclamation and feeling really secure in what you're saying takes time. So I don't think at any point, even if I waited more to share, I don't think it would have made a difference, because there's a process of like you understanding and then you sharing it and then you feeling confident in it, right? Like there's still that in between of like, okay, I'm going to share it, and it doesn't really matter at what point you do it because it's still like step 2.
How do you get to that point of feeling confident in what you're putting out? Because you're stripping like exactly everything, and just like, you're not like this cookie cutter person on social media. Like, you're getting vulnerable and deep. How do you stay confident when like social media is a lot about judgment?
Yeah.
That's just the reality of
Yeah.
it. Like, you post to get likes and comments and stuff, and hopefully they're positive. But when you're an influencer like yourself, like, you're bound to get a lot of hate as well, or a lot of negativity on there. And when you're doing that work internally and still in that place of like working on yourself, and then you have this negativity, like, how do you stay confident and not fall into like judgment and having that kind of come back?
Yeah, I think it's all about the point of focus, because for me, when I started doing social media, it brought me to so many amazing people that related to my experience, which for me was the first gen experience in general.
Yeah.
And so then I attracted friends, creators, opportunities around that. And, at the same time, I also attracted haters
Yeah.
and people who hated. But, I realized at the time that, I couldn't have the amazing things that it had brought me without the other things as well. And so same thing now on social media. It's hard no matter what part of the path you're in, but I think it's about focusing on your ideal person, right? Like that person that's gonna find insight in what you're saying and find inspiration and actually look to you as somebody to look up to, rather than the person who's trying to say the opposite of what you're saying or hating on how you look or whatever it may be.
Like, staying true. I think I was telling someone this the other day of like, I think the people who are very successful on social media is because they're true and authentic and raw, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think se nota when you're just like trying to, I don't know, like,
Yeah. I do think when I was at the peak of my content creator era, it was when I was sharing a lot, and it's the energy that you put out that people relate to. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
so the first time that I met you was at a political event.
Yeah.
So I think you're very vocal about like your breaking generational traumas and all that. But I think you're also very vocal about making a difference in our community, using your voice for voting, for who you're electing in office, officials. How did that come into be something that you're a big advocate on?
One video that I saw that really changed my perspective was a scientist who she was advocating for sustainability. And I think she was advocating for no more drilling in Texas because it would have damaged ecosystems and so forth. And she was sharing how she had a PhD in her environmental degree, and she didn't really have any power to continue with her cause unless she passed a bill and a law on it. So through that experience, she realized that whoever you elect really gets to say what is society going to look like, what are the laws going to look like, what do companies get to do and not to do. And so, I slowly started to understand that a lot of what happens in our communities and in our cities is dictated by law and by policy. And so it would be elusive to say that I'm about empowering a specific community when the laws quite literally are written for or against them, right? So then I feel very passionate about it, and I'm vocal about it, even though it's not like my main thing. I created an audience based on being first gen and being Hispanic. And so that's why I shared about it at the time, especially when it was something so actionable as go vote. Like, if you care about the way that your communities and cities are going to look like, go vote. And I feel like we all had the power to do that. And so that's why I was a big advocate for it.
I feel like this election, there was a lot at risk, right? And as a content creator, though, there was a lot at risk as well. Let's just be honest. Of like, you were approached by the same candidate that I was approached by, right? Let's just I think you can go on our social media and you can see, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever at some point hesitate taking a stance on either side because that could have prevented like labs opportunities elsewhere?
I think it's a little different because the collaborations and brand partnerships that I've done are nonprofits. And usually they're wanting me to promote an idea, a framework, or some type of resource. I haven't really worked with brands that are to promote a product. So then how did those foundations and nonprofits, I've worked with the American Society of Suicide Prevention, SAMHSA, and these organizations, they found me because they know that I'm an advocate for mental health and they align with my values. So then, since I've always been value driven with my content, then I never feared that because I've been saying what I believe all along.
Right.
But I do understand that, it did feel weird because there was people hating on me. And it was like,
it was,
first of all, why are you hating on me?
You don't even know me.
Yeah. And I was so confused. And for me, it was just obvious because we had already seen what the other candidate had done. And it was just very obvious to me and very, no sé, como que no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Yeah, which, you know how many people I've talked to, during that time who were like, I'm really pro this candidate, like Kamala Harris, right? But I don't want to put myself out there because I don't want this brand to stop working with me. It was it was a crazy time, to say the least, for everyone, I think. Even as a content creator, yes, speak your truth. But then there were a lot of people that I talked to who were like, I'm scared. You know what I mean? And it was just a very, I guess, intimidating time. And I just wanted to get your thoughts because you were so vocal on that. Another thing that you're very vocal about is ADHD.
Yeah.
So at what age were you diagnosed?
26? 25?
25, 26? Girl, I think I'm self-diagnosing myself in the last 2 years because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because we are doing so much things at the same time and we're like, okay, and we also work from home. That we're like, oh, let me just quickly put these dishes away. Oh, hold on. Did I send that email? Go this way. Oh, wait, hold on. I got a text. Let me do this. Oh, wait, did I post this on social media? Is that what your day looks like? Because, girl, that's what my day looks like. It truly does. And sometimes you're like, oh, I forgot to put back the dishes that I was intending to do in the first place.
Yeah.
How does coping with your ADHD look like for you?
It's been learning how to build systems that work for me and accepting me as I am. I didn't take the route of medication because I believe in holistic health and I thought the medication was going to be too strong.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was going to affect other areas. And I'm like, I already fixed my hormones. I don't want it to disrupt me. And so, to each their own.
Yeah.
You never know. Maybe I'll try it next month. We don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think, it's not just having ADHD. It's also society and how our world moves and what it requires of a woman. We work in seasons literally based on our cycle and we're expected to follow the male cycle, which is 24 hours. So there's a lot there, right? And for me, I'm also multi-passionate. I don't know if it's because of the ADHD or what it is. In human design, I'm also a manifesting generator, which is somebody who's meant to do many things in their lifetime. And so then...
Wait, what is that?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Let's talk about that.
So human design, I'm no expert, but it's astrology with numerology.
Okay.
And it's based on a lot of different philosophies. And there's 4 archetypes of the human that you are. Manifesting generator, pure manifester, and projector.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm a manifesting generator. And so in that archetype, you're meant to do a lot of things in your lifetime. And you're meant to, like career-wise, and you're meant to combine things that are not really usually combined to create something new. And you're here to be a disruptor. And when I found human design, I cried because I was like, what do you mean? I have permission to do different things and not feel scattered or like I don't have my shit together, you know?
Yeah.
It's just what I enjoy and it's just the way that I operate.
Is this a test? Like, can I find it online?
Yeah,
No.
you can.
Like, this
It's
is
based
making
on
me
your
think.
birth date and time. Yeah, basically like your astro chart.
Mom, what time was I born at?
Yeah.
Like, I need to know now. No,
Yeah.
because honestly, I don't know. Does this ever happen to you? And again, I don't know if it's because we're breaking generational like traumas, but sometimes like I have so much that I want to do in my life as like an entrepreneur and so many different business ideas and things that I want to tap into that are so unrelated.
See.
And sometimes like, I don't know, does this happen to you where you're like, you're super passionate about it and you're super excited, but there are little moments that you're like, why? Why do I want to do all this? And I think it's because there's like a calling that's like greater than us.
Yeah,
that's like
definitely.
directing us in that direction.
Oh, we're getting into this topic.
Yes, let's do this.
I don't know how to pronounce this name. I think it's Carl Jung. He is a philosopher in spirituality, which believes in the collective unconscious, that there's basically ideas like floating in the air and then whoever catches it like gets to execute on some grand idea. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so I do feel a few things. One, with ADHD and being multidimensional, I'm called to do a lot of different things. And I literally just made a video on this for TikTok that it's accepting when the cycle is over of that thing and not feeling shame or like a failure because it's over.
That part.
Yeah.
Like letting go of it is a tough part. The toughest part because you feel like you're failing. Like, wait, there's still more to give. But it's like sometimes chapter has just ended.
Sometimes that's
like
all it be giving.
Come to the end of the road, hun. You know what I mean? Like,
no, that's literally how I felt about some of the initiatives that I did last year. And it's like, are we really going to sit here and force it? No, we're not. If it doesn't feel exciting, aligned, or something that, you know, you want to do, then are you just doing it to prove to everyone else that you can do it, you know?
So how do you know that it's your time to move on from something and it's not that you're just, like, shit is tough. Like, you're going to go through obstacles. So how do you know you're not just getting disappointed and versus, no, this is the end of the chapter? How do you know that?
Oh, that's a good question. Everybody's figuring that out. I think it's van juntos, but I think when you remember why you started, like the basic why you started, and I think if you can picture yourself being successful in that thing and it still moves you, then you should go for it. But then I think of myself being successful in one of my initiatives that I did last year, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Yeah. Being really brutally honest with yourself.
Do I envision myself doing this? Dude, I had to have a conversation like that with myself. Like when I graduated ASU.
I listened to your podcast today.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah, the one about acting, right? Well, journalism.
I've been through cycles. Yes, journalism.
See, I think you're definitely a manifesting generator based on what I'm hearing.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I want to take that test and know like what.
Pero aunque no lo fueras, you have the autonomy to give yourself permission to do all the things that you want to do. And really, it's other people's expectations that keep us doing things that we don't really feel in alignment with anymore.
Girl, I am learning so much right now. I'm like, wait, can I take notes on my phone?
Wait, what did you say?
I'm
Can you
gonna watch
repeat
this
that?
back just to take the notes,
I love that. Good.
But speaking of learning so much from you, now you're working in a space where you help women. I'm sure it's not just women, anyone, in alignment, get
Yes.
aligned with their purpose,
Yeah.
their mission in life. How did you find this next step in your life?
This was back from when I was in the trenches.
Really?
Yeah, because it was a time where I knew that I didn't want to do my tech job forever.
Mhm.
But in my head, I was like, who am I outside of this career that I've built for the past 23 years?
Yes.
And that I work so hard for, and this is my whole identity, and that I spent so much time and effort and I didn't do anything else. And not because I didn't want to, but because it was so demanding to do engineering and to do the internships that it took my whole identity.
Right.
And so when I graduated from my master's, it was really the question of not necessarily like who I am, but who do I want to be? What do I want to create out of myself? And so fíjate que a veces me meto tanto en las respuestas que se me olvida la pregunta, güey. But what was the question?
I forgot what I asked. Hold on. Oh, how did you know this was the next, like, how did you discover this next career in your life? Yeah, yeah.
So then I was in the trenches,
Yeah.
and then I was like, okay, I don't want to do tech, but I don't know what else, what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I went through this whole process of self-discovery and self-transformation, discovering that I had ADHD, PCOS.
Girl, I have PCOS too.
It's already
like
a
little
trauma,
twins.
girly.
I
It's
know.
already a trauma. That is why we have it. No, and also, yeah, uncovering that trauma was really big and a huge part of my transformation. And I say transformation because I went from being totally consumed by my career identity and being this person that was type A, survival mode, cannot breathe, always just wanting the next milestone, like really that type of person, to being a completely different type of person. I mean, I think I'm still driven, but it just comes from a very different place. And I feel good and at peace and I take care of myself and I'm really happy.
Yeah.
And it came through that being in the trenches, 2020 and 2021. And so then now I created a program, which is a group program for Latinas, and I am open to anybody else who would want to join. But I did it for Latinas because it's around that experience of like, okay, who am I outside of that and what would I want to create? And so, for most of them, they want to create businesses or they want to start sharing their story on social media or they want to start public speaking. So they all want to do different things, but it's around creating something that's in alignment with their new identity.
Okay. That's, wow. I'm like learning so much. I'm like,
love that,
I
yeah.
love this so much. So when did you start this chapter in your career of coaching?
2024. Yeah.
How has that been like? Like, what has been one of the biggest things that you're like, damn, I made a difference there?
One of the most rewarding things has been seeing women accomplish the things that they've been wanting to do for years. So I had one person buy an investment property, another one just buy a home for herself, another one like be consistent with content, which is something that she had been wanting to do. And it was not just about the outcomes that they set for themselves, but it was also seeing them transform to be people who are confident and self-trusting of like being, hey, my dreams are valid, they're not too big, and there's something that I can do within an amount of time.
I think being confident and knowing that you are capable of achieving all this is like the number one thing. What do you tell your girls when imposter syndrome starts to like creep into their mind? Because I think that's what prevents you from that. Imposter syndrome and also doubt, right?
Yeah.
Is a big thing. And sometimes they work hand in hand together at the same time of like you're doubting your capabilities. And once you actually achieve it, you're like, wait, do I deserve this? So what do you say to like when those thoughts start creeping into people?
It really depends at what point they're on, but most of the time is working with emotions. I work with a lot of women that are very high achievers and they live in their brain. And so a huge part of my transformation was bringing it down here to the heart and to the body. And so that's called somatic work. And what you do is usually they're either avoiding an emotion that comes with what they're doing, or they have like a non-conscious block. So if it's something more emotional, I can direct them into like, okay, like if you were to stop and feel what this actually means to you, what would you say? So I had a client of mine, her name is Claudia. She got invited to do like a documentary style video. Like they wanted to interview her for this really big cause. And so then I was listening to her talking to me, and she was talking, and I was not listening with my mind, I was listening with my heart. Like I was feeling what she was feeling. And she was like, yeah, it's really great. And then she was like, but there was like some lingering like doubt, or I don't know if it was doubt. I think it was more about hesitation.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And then I was like, Claudia, if you were to, let's not think about the logistics and everything that's going to happen and how they're going to record you. Let's go down to your heart a little bit. If you were to think just even like a year back of you doing this, or also think of this experience in a third person point of view. If you knew a girl that was from South Central LA and she worked at this big aerospace company as an engineer doing what she loves, and has worked at NASA and has done all these things, how would you feel about her being recorded for a documentary style video? Because her voice is going to get her like the organization funding and all these things. Like, how would you feel? And I could see her tearing up. And then she was like, this is a really big deal that I hadn't processed and stopped to celebrate myself and feel the feeling.
Yeah.
So that's one way, like to actually feel the feeling of the thing or the thing that they're avoiding too, and creating safety in that new feeling. Or like the unconscious mind is really working with like, what bad thing happens if I do this grand thing? What bad thing happens if I, no sé, de que I get my dream speaking engagement, or I get, or I start my dream business and I leave my corporate job? Like what bad thing happens? And then so you start to deconstruct their beliefs and reframe them in a way that is helpful and useful to them.
Wow. You've accomplished so much. TED Talks, Harvard, everything, Microsoft, now coaching and changing people's lives, and helping them align more to what their purpose is. What has been like your proudest moment of you looking back and saying, I can't believe this is my life?
Soy bien cursi. I am so corny sometimes, but I sincerely think about me 5 to 7 years ago, and I think I wanted to be the woman that I am now. Like I wanted to be knowledgeable and wise, and I wanted to do these things, and I wanted to start different things. I just didn't know how I would get there. And if I think about it, even in 2019, when I started at Microsoft, we did an exercise where they would ask you, what would you do if money weren't in the picture, if it weren't an issue? And I said motivational speaker. I said that in 2019. So deep down, I knew what I wanted to do. So I would say it has been more about who I am rather than what I have accomplished. It's been the person and the woman that I've become that I'm the most proud of.
I'm going to ask you this. What do you want to be remembered by?
My God. That's a very good question. Yo siento que todo lo que hago ahorita, like just, I think being a person that's, I don't know if relatable, I don't know if that's the right word, but just like approachable and just a person that cares about other people and society. Yeah.
I loved this conversation. Can I just say, I feel like we need a part 2 at some point, because I'm like, we can go on, and I think it's already been an hour at this point, but I just, honestly, I learned so much from you. I went into this podcast not with my questions that we have, whatever. And I just like, I am so grateful for this space that we've like shared, because I think I've learned so much from like everything that you have shared and been so vulnerable with. And I just hope and pray that someone on the other side can learn as well, because I'm taking this all in and I'm like, dang, I need to apply this to my life, or I need to go and do that test that you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a reason why we are the way that we are. And we just need to be so accepting of like feeling our emotions and not blocking them, like you said, and discovering like what can lead us to that next step in our life or career or our relationships or whatever, and just stop like blocking things from happening.
Sí, y algo que no mencioné, something I didn't mention that I forgot when you were asking about we're called to do those things. We are called to do those things. Like, it is not a coincidence. It is not something that you created out of thin air. It is something that we're being guided to do. I am very spiritual, and I do believe that I'm being guided to do all the things that I'm doing, and I'm facilitated to do all these things that I never really imagined. And it's just about me accepting and not resisting. And that's our natural state, to just accept the abundance and accept it. And sometimes we don't want to be doing that.
Accept and not resist. Okay, so let's manifest to end the episode. What are you manifesting for the next year?
Ay, me preguntaste lo mismo en Latinas Power Talks in the event.
And it probably changed. It probably changed because that was like 6 months ago.
Girl, you know what I said?
What did you say?
I feel like I didn't have a great answer. Well, it was a good answer, but I was just like, I am manifesting empowerment for our community. Porque, girl, it was like during the election time, and I was like, girl, I'm just praying these people open their minds, bro. So in terms of manifesting, for myself, I want to keep manifesting good experiences in my business, more abundance. For me, aligned clients, aligned experiences. Yeah, just continue to do what I'm doing, but scaling it, doubling it.
Doubling it.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing space with me. I honestly loved this episode. I really did. I learned so much, like I said. And I thank you so much for being open, sharing space, and being here. And let's do this again. Yeah?
Sí, te aprecio mucho. Muchas gracias.
Where can people find you?
Instagram, TikTok is Soy Gina Moreno, and YouTube as well, Soy Gina Moreno. Or, ¿qué? Espérate, my brain glitch. Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Soy Gina Moreno, and LinkedIn, Gina Moreno, if you use that. Podcast, Empowermente.
Season 2.
Yes, season 2.
And thank you guys so much. Thank you. And thank you guys for tuning in to another week of Latinas Power Talk. I will see you here back next week on Wednesday. Bye.